What's up, everybody? Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time you're watching this. I hope you're doing well. I hope everybody's happy, safe, joyous. My name is Imari Ventura Roches. I am a licensed speech language pathologist. I am an educational administrator, and I am a special needs parent coach. Welcome, welcome, welcome to everybody who's watching. If you're new in the special needs supermoms group, it's nice to meet you. It's nice to see you. If you've never watched one of these, if you have, and we've been together a long time, thank you for coming back. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Okay, we are trying to grow that YouTube over there. So, what's going on? It is October. We are creeping and crawling towards the middle of October. Very exciting. Everybody should be well into the swing of the school year. I hope you guys are doing well. There are a plethora of resources here, everything from IEP to developmental delay, what are some good AI prompts for your next IEP meeting, and some strategies on how to organize yourself, right? We have deep dives, parent chats. Just please take some time to go through the records to see what I've been curating over the past couple of years and enjoy. Okay. Today's topic or title is Wiggle, Wiggle, Wait, and Worry. Again, wiggle, wiggle, wait, and worry. Okay, so let's just jump into it. What am I talking about? Um, this this chat is really for moms of small kids, okay? And more specifically, preschoolers. So preschool is a very interesting age group, right? Because they're no longer toddlers, they're a lot more independent, but they're not yet school age. It's just really kind of the very, very beginnings of what is it like to go to school, to be introduced into the classroom routine, to pay attention, sit still, socialize in a brand new way, and really kind of have your first school experience. I am a fierce advocate for preschool. I believe in it. Um, I mean, with all my heart and all my soul, I believe in preschool. It's such a good thing and it's so important. And so, I have a little one in preschool for anybody who doesn't know. Um, and I've been talking to some moms of 3 and 4. I talk to moms of 3 and 4 year olds all day, every day. But I mean, on the playground, rather, I've been talking to some moms who have just told me, you know, I don't know what we're going to do for kindergarten next year. He's so wiggly. And that prompted an idea in me. Let's talk about those wiggles, right? Because there's definitely some typical preschool behavior. The wiggles are normal to an extent, but then there's some indicators that may lead us to believe that the wiggles and inattentiveness and hyperactivity may be something more that we should really be understanding. So wiggle, wiggle, wait, check it out. You don't have to worry because you're watching me and you have a multitude of resources at your fingertips because you're here with me. But a lot do. A lot of moms do. Please do tag a mom, invite a mom, tell a mom or dad, could be a professional also, but please invite people and get them excited and on board because when we learn together, nobody gets left behind. Okay? All right. As always, I want to start out letting moms know you are not alone. Many moms see big energy, impulsiveness, distractibility in preschoolers and wonder, is this normal or is there something more? Right? It's very, very common. Especially, I don't like this he's a boy thing, but sometimes often we think with our boys that there could be a problem, and sometimes the behaviors can be more intense than we anticipated. So I have for you, and you guys, I don't like to shift my eyes so much, but I have notes and I cited a lot of research. So I want to make sure that I get it all in there. Um, I have for you a brief overview of 6 key differences, including typical behavior and possible ADHD indicators or red flags, right? That tend to distinguish typical preschool behavior from potential ADHD. As always, I'm going to say communicate with your pediatrician. And if you don't know how to communicate with your pediatrician, I have a video on that. I have a live on with Dr. Maxine Murray. She was amazing. She was wonderful, and we spoke about how you could speak with your healthcare provider. Also, Dr. Jalila, another amazing nurse practitioner, get in there, do a deep dive, look at the resources. She's another one. She's versed in ADHD. She knows a lot about it. She has a lot of management strategies. Also spoke about how to communicate with your doctor, right? So that's where you have to start. In some candid and honest conversations with your doctors. But it's good to have the background knowledge and know what you want to say and be very clear and concise with your observations. And so we will go over 6 contrasts between what's often normal for a preschooler and what may signal ADHD-like patterns. Okay, I'm going to say it. Just like with autism, you need to get the right referral and go to the right professional for the diagnosis. Okay, if you go for a school-based eval or something else, oftentimes it's a checklist of symptoms that are observed symptoms, but you got to get on that waiting list and schedule your appointment with the right doctor. Okay. So I'm using evidence from the CDC, the NIMH, which is the National Institute for Mental Health, and the Mayo Clinic, right, to support each of these 6 contrasts. So let's start. Number 1. Duration and consistency of fluctuation. Number 1 is duration and consistency of fluctuation. Okay, so in typical preschool behavior, preschoolers often have bursts of inattention, right? Bursts of hyperactivity and impulsiveness, but these usually vary by setting, mood, fatigue, or whatever their internal state is. So with a typical preschool behavior, yeah, you may see the fidgeting, the wiggling, the inattentiveness and inability to focus, but they should just be bursts, right? And it should look different across different settings. Possible ADHD indicators. In ADHD, symptoms are more persistent over time, meaning they could persist and go on for many months and appear across multiple settings, home, preschool, play dates. Okay? What to consider. If your child seems extremely distractible at home and in childcare day after day over months, not just on hard days, that's a signal. According to the NIMH, ADHD is defined by an ongoing pattern of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Okay, so it's just that the symptoms in typical preschool behavior may be like just short bursts, albeit frequent. But the National Institute for Mental Health is saying that one of the ADHD symptoms is that it's ongoing, consistent all the time. All right. Number 2, proportional to developmental level / peer norms. Okay. I mean, that's the whole early childhood scene, is comparing kids to their typically developing peers. So you'll see that a lot. In typical preschool behavior, young children naturally have shorter attention spans, more impulsivity, and higher activity levels, right? Just very energetic. ADHD behaviors, however, are developmentally inappropriate, meaning well beyond what's typical for their age. Well, well beyond what's typical for their age, or what peers do, right? So when you take all those behaviors and the observed symptoms, and you look at other children, it's just very different. The Mayo Clinic states that, quote, children with ADHD symptoms start before age 12. And they emphasize that diagnosis depends on whether the behaviors are excessive compared to others that are the same age. So I always like to say I do my best research on the playground, and I have. I'm a mom of two, and I've been a mom for 8 years, going on 9, right? More than 8.5. And my best, so I've been a clinician much longer than I've been a mom. And I was into research and research methods way before I became a mom. And I'm always looking at samples, right? I'm always looking at groups of kids to establish what's normal and then what's kind of behind the average and what's kind of ahead of the average. And you can do the best sampling on the playground. Just seeing other kids pass by, sort of observing, kid watching, you could do the best things. And so when a child seems excessively inattentive and excessively impulsive and active as compared to other kids their age, then there's that's something to look deeper into. What to watch for and to consider. When behaviors seem dramatically more extreme, for example, my child can't sit for more than 5 minutes, but others can. That raises concerns. Also, if even in preferred play, the child cannot sustain attention beyond what's typical for 3 or 4 year olds, that's a red flag, right? So it's important to talk about preferred play because sometimes when the activity is boring or hard, the frustration threshold is reached, right? And so they may be inattentive. But if it's a preferred activity, something they really like, it's their favorite Lego set, it's their favorite puzzle, their favorite thing, and they still don't sustain attention through that, that's, well, something to watch and consider, an observation to write down and speak with your provider about. Okay, number 3, the ability to pause, self-calm, and shift. Okay, the ability to self-calm. And last month we spoke about self-regulation, so I'm comfortable using that word with everybody. The ability to pause, self-regulate, and shift attention, right? So basically we're talking about transitions here. For typical preschoolers, they may get upset, distracted, or hyper, but with cues, right? And redirection. That's a word we use in education. That's a word used in the classroom to redirect, bring them back to the task. For example, it's time, let's wait. The preschooler can gradually reorient themselves or self-regulate, calm down after a short period of time. Okay, so we see often with typical preschoolers that redirection works. It works. You may have to tell them 1 or 2 times, put it down, come back, or calm down, let's come back. But those 1 or 2 redirections really help to pull their attention back together and get them calm, focused, and ready to learn. ADHD related impulse. Oh, I'm sorry. A child with ADHD may struggle to transition. They cannot slow down or resist external redirection. They may act impulsively or quote unquote like they don't have the brakes on, right? They can't activate the brakes. They just can't calm down. According to the CDC, children with ADHD often have trouble resisting temptation, and they make careless mistakes, have difficulty turn taking, and have trouble getting along with others, right? All these are kind of like pragmatic skills, and they are secondary to the condition, because the child has difficulty struggling. They struggle transitioning. They have real difficulty transitioning. What to watch and consider? Observe how the child handles transitions. For example, from play to cleanup or from snack to nap, right? Those are like very typical preschool times. If redirection or verbal cues barely help, that's a hint. That's something to consider, an observation that you should write down and tell your healthcare provider. Also, note whether frustration escalates quickly and is hard to soothe, right? And so in really the ability to the self-regulation, you're looking at how well and how quickly they're able to do it. That those are real indicators of um, typical preschool behavior and not. Okay. Number 4, impulsivity and risk beyond safety margin. Okay. So safety awareness is very important for 3 and 4-year-olds, but can take a while to develop. So normal preschoolers experiment, they test the limits and occasionally act out without thinking, right? I mean, if you imagine the frontal lobe and all of the executive functioning abilities take well into your 20s to really form and finish developing, a preschooler will really have a hard time with that. So, for example, running into the street and not being watched, right? And not looking. Touching something hot and not even thinking about that could be dangerous. This is all risk and safety awareness and impulsivity. So a normal preschooler doesn't have a whole lot of risk awareness. They don't have too much understanding of safety, and they may, right, be so impulsive to do something like run out into the street. Preschoolers will, in many forms, test the limits and experiment how far they can get away with something. Totally typical. However, with a possible ADHD indicator is that their impulsivity is more frequent, less responsive to warnings, and risk safety repeatedly. Like things happen. It's like borderline almost disastrous, and they just don't learn from that and keep on doing it. The NIMH, the National Institute for Mental Health, notes that impulsivity indicates interrupting, intruding on others, or having trouble waiting one's turn. The Mayo Clinic also emphasizes hyperactivity and impulsive behavior as core features. Core features, okay? So please know with this number 4 that with impulsivity and risk awareness, there is a normal amount of impulsivity that preschoolers exhibit, right? But when they're risky, they're frequently risky, and they just do not respond to warnings, and they risk their safety repeatedly. That is a serious indicator. Hyperactivity and impulse behavior, according to the Mayo Clinic, are core features of ADHD. What to consider and watch for is that if your child repeatedly ignores safety boundaries, for example, darting towards the road or climbing dangerously in a way that seems beyond normal daring, right? Or seems unable to pause when you say stop, they just can't control themselves, they just gotta go. That is a red flag. That is something to write down in your journal of observations and share with the healthcare provider. All right, number 5, impact or interference in multiple settings. So a typical preschooler may struggle in one setting, for example, at home or when they're tired, but they do better at preschool or with familiar caregivers, right? We spoke about getting back into the swing of things. And I spent a lot of time just, explaining context about how when a child is at home all summer long. There's low expectations. There's a lot less structure, oftentimes a lot less routine compared to when they get back to school. And there is a lot more routine, higher expectations. There's a cognitive demand, right? And so a child, preschooler, may struggle with, just um, shifting into the expectations of different settings, and that's totally normal and okay, right? However, in ADHD symptoms and indicators for children tend to be noticeable in more than one setting: home, preschool, play. The NIMH and the CDC both stress that to be diagnosable, I didn't say this, the CDC and the National Institute on Mental Health said that to be diagnosable, ADHD symptoms must affect functioning across settings, right? The Mayo Clinic notes that diagnosis in young children is tricky because normal energy levels vary. Clinicians check if behavior is pervasive, right? And so that's the reason why this is even a topic, because children are different, right? Their behavior is vastly variable across context and across periods in time. I do evaluations, I read evaluations all day long, and I'm always very careful in telling the parents that this evaluation happened as a moment in time. And so the Mayo Clinic is just confirming that, letting you know that it's tricky, right? Because their behavior is so varied. What to watch for and to consider: talk to your child's preschool or childcare providers. Do they observe the same difficulties, attention, self-control? If so, that strengthens the possibility of ADHD, right? So I did a Hey Mama reel a couple of months ago during the summer. And one of the things was, how do you know an IEP meeting went well? And one of my points was, they see what you see, right? You're seeing the same things. And that same concept applies to this indicator. You want to make sure that people in multiple contexts of the child's life are seeing the impulsive behavior and the reduced self-control. I really hope that this is blessing a mom, that this is really helping somebody to get clarity, right? So that you can begin to have some deeper conversations. Okay, number 6, in the very last difference between typical preschool behavior and ADHD potential diagnosis is that response to structure, scaffolding, and support. Okay, response to structure, scaffolding, and support. I want to preference this by saying, for a couple of reasons that I've already said, the diagnosis, the differentiation between typical preschool behavior and ADHD is difficult, right? Developmentally, it's difficult to distinguish both. However, another thing is exposure, right? So another very tricky one is exposure, right? Because some children may be typical, but may be demonstrating ADHD behavior because they just have not been exposed to structure and routine, and any type of expectation. Preschool is totally optional in all 50 states. Nobody has to go to preschool. And so imagine, being, or nursery, or nobody has to go to early childhood um, programming. So imagine a child who's never been introduced to structure or routine. They've been home, for a couple of years with parents or perhaps grandparents, in a very loving and supporting environment, but not too routine. They they have to have the chance to try to be exposed to routine and structure before they can even move forward, right? To think about ADHD. So most preschoolers typically improve with routine, consistent limits, positive reinforcement, and reminders, right? So the response for typical preschoolers who are impulsive, who can't focus, who are wiggly, right? It gets better once they've been to school for a while, they've been introduced to the preschool routines, the classroom structure, the classroom routines, the classroom culture. It helps, right? So over time, you see less and less of the impulsiveness and the wiggling and the decreased focus. However, children with ADHD may improve somewhat when exposed to those things, but the improvements are less sustained. Okay, check that out. Children with ADHD may improve somewhat, but improvements are less sustained. They need more scaffolding, and even the supports still lag behind. All right, that's like really something to understand. With typical preschool behavior, typical 3 and 4 year olds who, are just being 3 or 4. They wiggle, they can't stay still, they can't control themselves, they don't focus that long. However, when they get into school and they're exposed to structure, routine, boundaries, limitations, positive reinforcements, um, limitations, everything gets better. However, a child with ADHD, a preschooler with ADHD, really, with all of those supports and cues, may improve just a tiny bit, but it's not sustained and it's not getting any better. Even the need for more scaffolding and support, and even support, will still lag behind. So really not much is changing. There's no progress, okay? What to consider and think about is that implement structured supports, for example, visual schedules, timer, frequent breaks, one-on-one coaching, and see how much the child improves. If even with a very highly structured setting, the behaviors remain extremely challenging, it's a sign to explore further. It's something to write down in your book of observations and speak about with your healthcare provider, okay? That all of these things, they're just not working because there's a lot of intervention going on and things are remaining the same. Okay. So those are 6 differences between typical preschool behavior and ADHD deficits. You'd have to be kind of following along in the group and following my personal page to know that October is ADHD Awareness Month. So that's why I picked this topic. I think the ribbon is orange. So if you're able to this month, please wear orange. We also shout out breast cancer awareness. Yes, we do. And domestic violence awareness, 2 other very important causes. This has been wonderful. I love it. If you have a question, if you have a more in-depth question, if you see these things, if you have questions and you want to get started on like some observations and logs to communicate with your doctor about, please message me or write it in the chat or write it in the feed. Let me know. We're all working together. We have moms of older kids here who've gone through this, right? And who can give some suggestions and recommendations. You also don't have to, if you want to write it in the feed and add something, you don't have to put your child's name. You don't, okay? In very young children who are 3 and 4, clinicians are cautious about diagnosing ADHD because so many ADHD behaviors overlap with normal development. The Mayo Clinic notes that signs can be noticed in preschoolers, but again, diagnosis is tricky. It's very small to diagnose a child with ADHD. Always rule out other contributing factors. For example, sleep problems, hearing, vision, language delays, trauma, stress, and medical conditions. You have to rule those things out before you can say a child, their inattentiveness is due to ADHD, right? What if there is a vision impairment and they're inattentive and not focused because of a visual, because they can't see? So you have to make sure that all other health and conditions are non-existent so that we don't confuse comorbidities. If you see multiple red flags, bring your notes to your child's pediatrician or developmental behavioral specialist. Early behavioral supports, environmental structure, and consultation can and will help, even while waiting and watching. Like I said before, I am a fierce advocate for preschool services, for early identification, for early detection and early intervention. I I think that even when my kids are big, right? I will still be a fierce advocate for early intervention, early detection, and early identification, because I believe in it so much, and because there's so much research and literature to support the brain being so receptive between birth and 5. So please get the help and support. It starts with observing, writing it down what you see, and having a conversation. Okay. Um, I just want to wrap it up. 6 distinguishing patterns, right? Durability, developmental appropriateness, ability to self-regulate and shift, impulsivity, cross-setting impact, and response to structure. I want to encourage you to keep a journal, keep a log. I've said this before so that you have your everything ready to present to the physician and say, this is what I'm seeing, or to the teacher or to the school-based support team and say, this is what I'm seeing. Note particular behaviors, the times, what precedes them. We need to know what is the trigger and what is the setting. Also write down what was the response. How did you respond? How did you respond? Offer to answer any questions, after you present this to the doctor or to the teacher. Be ready to expound and expand on your observations. And that's really it. I hope that there is a mom watching who really values this information and it is useful to you. It's an emotionally packed subject, but it's important because, like when I spoke last month about self-regulation, it's one of those things, the ability to self-regulate, be calm, cool, and ready to learn. If a child doesn't have that, if they can't self-regulate, it is a barrier to learning. It is a hindrance to instruction, right? When they can settle down, they're ready to learn and to listen. And the gap just the longer that it is ignored, the inability to self-regulate, focus, and demonstrate attention, the longer that is ignored, the bigger the gap gets for instruction. Because meanwhile, while everybody else was sitting still and listening, your child wasn't able to and missed the whole lesson on Tuesday, and then missed it on Thursday, and then missed it Friday, and then missed it the next week, and then we just get further and further behind. So it's really, really important to understand and to have conversations and get the help. I'm here for parent coaching. I'm here for evaluations. I'm booked up for the rest of October with speech and language evaluations. But my November is open now. So anybody, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, I'm here for you. You can find me on ZocDoc, read the reviews, and look at my website, get to know me. If you're not my friend on my personal Facebook, please be my friend, so you can get to know me more than just our chat. Although I love them, you can see pictures of my kids, see pictures of my husband, see pictures of things that we do. So please, friend request me and I will accept. Everybody have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, a wonderful weekend. Cheers to October and the days to come. They could only get better, right? Up and forward. I am here again. My name is Imari Ventura Rochez, speech language pathologist. It is a pleasure, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Take care. Bye.